Hi, thanks for having us. My name's Caitlin, and this is Brad, the director of the film Still Standing. So yeah, it's lovely to be a part of it.
Fantastic. So do you want to tell us the journey of how the film came about? Because obviously we've all grown up with arcades, we've all had an interest, we've all spent a lot of money, piling on the 20-cent pieces, the 50 cents, the dollar coins, the $2 coins. How did this movie come about?
Okay, so yeah, the film's been in production now for over 2.5 years. And it was just one of those things where for as long as I've been into video and film production, I personally had always wanted to make a documentary. And I spent quite a while trying to think of what would be a great topic to, approach, given where we're situated in the world and whatnot and what we have access to. But also like what's visual, because, like I'm big on the sort of that nice filmic cinematography side of things as well. But yeah, it kind of just seemed obvious when it occurred to me. I was at the bowling alley with my dad a few years back, just having a few beers bowling. And being in this bowling alley and hearing the sounds and the smell of the bowling alley, I was like, man, I'm really getting this nostalgia of, because that's where I used to play Mortal Kombat II when I was a kid, and they had an MK2 cab there, and it was like a place of worship for us. We were there all the time. All of my pocket money went there, and it just triggered something. And I was like, man, I almost swear I can hear the cab still there. And I said, maybe this could be a cool doco. Like, I'd love to try to find it, see where it is, if it still exists. And from there, it kind of evolved and become more general in our approach to the film. Yeah. And before we knew it, we were sort of like stepping back in time and meeting people that are in the industry. And then it branched out from being about one arcade game to arcade and pinball, and then the industry, and then the people that are still doing it and what goes into it. And it was one of those things. We kind of scratched the surface a bit, and this whole world kind of presented itself, and we were like, this is a cool idea. Let's shine some light on this stuff.
Fantastic. So do you consider yourself a gamer first or a filmmaker first?
Oh, probably a film.
Yeah, sorry, probably an awful question to ask.
No, not at all. It's probably, oh man, that's hard, because like I've got a couple of arcades, but they're not old school arcades, like the arcade 1-ups and like a main multi-cab and stuff like that. But I think making this film, I've realized that if I did want to have, like, say, an original MK2, I kind of need to have a little bit of technical skills there to keep it going if it breaks down, you know what I mean? Like if it was an original sort of cab. So if you think about it in that regard, definitely a filmmaker first. I'm just a big fan of that sort of culture, of that 80s, 90s sort of, that golden sort of era of not just video games, but films and cartoons and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I was born in 82. So, there's that sort of nostalgia there always. And it looks great on film.
So you've been a child of the 80s like myself.
Yeah.
What did you done? Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter? Did you have that sort of conflict?
100%. And I was heavily in the Mortal Kombat camp. Like,
oh, you're Mortal Kombat, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, to me, Mortal Kombat was like the ultimate, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Like special moves and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, I found that Mortal Kombat 2 particularly, it just had this atmosphere about it. It had this real dark, gritty sort of atmosphere about it. And that really captured me. Like, I would sit there and wonder, like, you got the backgrounds, the stage backgrounds. I'd be like, man, I wonder what's like around the corner and down the road. And like, I wonder what, like, it made me feel like a world existed within that. And it had me, it really took me.
That's understandable. So next stage for this film, where how far along are you? The trailer looks fantastic. Hence, we reached out and said, "Look, let's chat. This really has a lot of potential. I've seen your other work. You're actually a finalist in that short film category. Fantastic at what you do.
Thank you so much.
How far are we away from seeing even a raw cut of the film? We're eager to see it.
We're really optimistic that the film will be released later this year, in saying that if something really cool pops up and it needs to be in the film, we're more than happy to push it back, because we don't want to cut it short, in a sense. I mean, in saying that, we could be filming what we're filming at the moment for years. There is no limit. We have to at some point cut it off, but we're at this stage, we're really optimistic that this will be released later this year on various platforms. Currently we're in the depths of just wrapping up some of our interviews here with local arcade owners and private collectors, and we've got some exciting things in the works, heading out to some really cool locations out in really regional Australia to capture as well, which we're really excited to showcase in the film. So I'm not sure whether those places have really been shown in the light that we're about to give them, which is exciting from our perspective as well.
Yeah, that is cool. One thing you touched on is the private collectors. Do you find there's a lot, like a collector with, say, 20 cabinets or a large amount of cabinets at their homes, or is it more just the one or two with 50 games installed on it?
Oh, you've got some that have one or two, or like they've just got a couple, and usually they're the ones that are really just starting to tap into it. But the ones that we're really coming across are the ones that have room, like a whole room dedicated in their house to private collections. I mean, we've had conversations and we've met, or we're, meeting people who are friends with people who own storage containers and warehouses full of arcades and pinball machines that they've just been collecting well before it really took off in terms of private collecting. So I think that's been a really cool thing to see. I mean, personally, I didn't even know that people own that many. These people are owning more arcades than some of the arcades in Australia do. So yeah, that's really exciting though, because and a lot of them are in cool condition. They look really good on film.
We're going to potentially, if it pans out the way we're hoping it pans out, we're not delving heaps into the private collection side, but what we have kind of lined up and planned at the moment, what we will delve into as far as that goes will be jaw-dropping.
Yeah,
like it'll blow people's minds, and kind of circling back a little bit, like what's happening is, as soon as we sort of went a bit more public with this, like we've been working on this film for a couple of years, but as soon as we actually set up a Facebook page and started circulating some marketing and the poster and a couple of trailers, it's unearthing things naturally that are presenting that we want to now include in the film that we just didn't know about 18 months ago. Do you know what I mean? So people are like, oh, you guys are doing this film, you really should speak to this person. And so we're still kind of on that journey of discovery.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Even though the editing process of this film is a big exercise in what do you call it, like planning and cataloging and tagging the media, transcribing all the interviews, and basically storyboarding the whole thing and planning it all out. And basically we're at the point now where we have the arcs and we have the parallel story arcs, and now we're just going out and getting the last few bits of what we need. We definitely see an end in sight for sure.
And I think when I said like we could be filming this forever, what we really want to show, I guess, the audience is, think of it like almost like the executive summary of the industry as a whole, and we want it to show it in a true light. So there's that balancing act of how do we accurately represent the industry and the people who are fighting to keep it alive without this being the world's longest documentary as well. So yeah.
And it's like the funnest thing we do. Like going out and filming this doco is so fun. Like we're both going to be sad when the filming of Still Standing is concluded. And we've met so many good people that like we would consider personal friends now. You know what I mean? Like we've gone through some highs and lows with people, and just because we've been doing it for so long.
Oh, fantastic! I'm here with Stephen from One Up Arcade here in Brisbane, and you can probably notice the sort of blue purple glow in the background, and that's actually of the arcade. And I think it's so fitting that I'm having an interview with you guys in an arcade while we're chatting, and you can hear the buzz and the vibrancy of an arcade.
Yeah,
I guess that will come across in your film as well. It's that sort of spine-tingling moment which you can't really describe, but when you're here and when you've got nice cameras and all that sort of stuff, and you build a brilliant atmosphere on the screen, it will come across really strongly in your film. And I think in those early trailers, when we saw them, we saw that atmosphere and that character come across in that film already, which I think that's why I guess people are so interested in. I know you've had interviews with the ABC, all sorts of media interest in your film. I think that's why it's resonating with so many people.
It definitely seems to just spark something in so many people, probably more people than we even anticipated. On the occasion so far that we have done radio interviews and stuff like that, the producers have made points of saying afterwards, when we go back off, when we're just sort of wrapping up on the phone to them, like, wow, like this is getting a lot more calls and texts. Like people are actually calling in and telling stories and interacting like more than we probably normally see. And I think for us personally as well, when people, the old, so what do you do? And we say, well, we're working on a documentary film about, the pinball and arcade industry. We don't ever not get a story back of like, oh, that reminds me, back at the Fish and Chippy when I was a kid at da-da-da, they had a Wonder Boy there and da-da-da, like, and away you go. And everybody has that story, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, it's so easy to reminisce. Even when we started this conversation 30 minutes ago, we had that discussion about Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat. Those playground arguments, not that they ever got physical, but we have a heated discussion between, this character's better than this character. If you combine Mortal Kombat with Street Fighter, this character would win, and all that sort of stuff. It does bring back childhood memories. But I can imagine the people that you're interviewing, are they, what age ranges are they? Are they from school age, or are they a little bit older? Are they the ones that the mums and dads who have got the picket fence and mortgage and all that sort of stuff? Or who's it resonating with?
They're more probably from the 80s or earlier. We've got like the full spectrum, really. Like we've got some of the industry pioneers that are now in their 80s themselves that popularized arcade. Like one of the guys that we've got in the film that is considered kind of like the role model for everyone, at least in Adelaide. He set up one of the biggest arcades at the time, probably in the world. It was 4 stories high. He brought Space Invaders to Australia for the very first time. He traveled overseas to see what was popular, and he would put them in, and he put them in his arcade. So he's in his 80s, and then we've got all the way through to sort of mid 50s, early 60s that are guys that were working as techs when they were younger, and then have carried all the way through that are still working as like doing restorations now, because that's a dying skill, like if you've got a collectible pinball machine and you want it restored like to its former glory, like you really need to have someone that knows how to do that stuff, and do it to not butcher the machine or completely replace or swap things out. There's an art to it, and knowing when to preserve versus to restore. And then you've got all the way down to sort of as young as sort of early 30s that are new wave business owners that are coming and turning this into like a full experience with food and card games and like modern games and
tournaments and stuff like that. Yeah, like your LAN systems, and that still are giving a nod to pinball and arcade. And we're basically, our film starts, the story begins in 1931, and we come all the way up until current.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we're going to try to cover the whole thing.
Well, Stephen, do you have a question for them? Stephen's the owner of, or one of the owners of the arcade. Do you have anything?
I guess just well, you covered a bit at the start. I guess the personal motivation to do this, and you said that orientated around Mortal Kombat as a child and the connection with that. And I think to some extent that's the same motivation here with One Up Arcade is, we grew up with arcade games at fish and chip shops. They were everywhere. They were omnipresent, and now they're not. And it's about bringing that all back, to play Wonder Boy, to play Street Fighter, to play Mortal Kombat, play Shinobi, to play all these games where 5 years ago there was nowhere you could play them anywhere in a public venue. So I guess those sorts of things, are motivating you to make this film, me to open this arcade, and I think there's a lot of people who are in that space.
Yeah, like for me, like I think, especially for like yourself that owns an arcade, I think as a fan, and there was this kind of almost like this mental gap, I guess, of truly understanding what it meant to be able to still play a machine today. And I went to an arcade because I found an arcade in Adelaide that had a Mortal Kombat 2, an original Mortal Kombat 2. And as I was sort of watching, chatting to my son about it, a couple of kids came on and were playing it, and they were eating food and they were being really rough with it, and they didn't know what it was. And I was like, it took all my strength not to be like, oi, careful with that machine.
Yeah, I bet you Stephen gets that a bit.
Yeah, we see a lot of that.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys bite your tongues, because I've watched the arcade operators, and that, I guess you have to have a little bit of a But to me, I was like, there's a big thing missing here, is that if you're actually able to do that and play one of these games now, like there's a story behind that. Like there's people and a story and a journey that this thing is, that it's not in landfill, and that it's working in front of you in 2022. And I just think that is it just goes under the radar too often. I think people in the Facebook groups and in the industry get it, but people don't get that it's a privilege to be able to play these machines nowadays, and what they do for people, like what they do for people's just, people's well-being and mental health, to get, to feel good and feel that nostalgia. When you're in an arcade, like it's like jogging or something, your worldly problems kind of disappear a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could have that story every day with someone who comes in, and this is the first time in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they've stepped foot in an arcade, and a room full of games from their childhood. And it's like that smell of your childhood. It's like that, something that's familiar and comforting.
100% comfort. Yeah. Comfort food.
I even think more broadly than that as well. The other thing that we really want to highlight is how much an arcade owner has to sacrifice or put on the line or fight to keep them alive. When we look at the arcades that are, massive over in the States, or even your private collectors in the States, it's really easy. Well, it is much easier for them to get an arcade or a pinball machine. And we really want to emphasize, like, not only are you fighting against the modern consoles, but you're fighting against the pure distance and then the cost increase and what it actually takes to get good quality arcades and pinballs here in Australia, and then maintaining them. And there's a lot that goes into it. We really just want people to appreciate what goes into it. And, when you're going into an arcade to play it, all of that's happened behind the scenes, just so you can have that little slice of joy.
Yeah, and that's great that you're doing something to shine a light on that. 5 years ago when I was starting out with the arcade here, I spoke to a few people in the industry, and I was new to the industry then, and they pretty much told me, like, you're crazy, is what you want to do. And they're mostly right. We started with about 50, 58 machines when we opened, and we were committed to a crazy goal. We had a game every week for the first 2 years, and we got to over 200 machines now. And many people would say it, can't be done, and they were mostly right. It's very, very challenging.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the Facebook footage of you or one of your team doing that. It looks like open heart surgery on these things.
It is. Without guides, without manuals, there's no documentation. It's half technology and it's half witchcraft.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't imagine even attempting to follow the wiring, the color coding of all the wiring. Oh, insane.
Yeah, the first time you see the the scoreboard area of the pinball machine swing open for the first time, you're like, wow, okay, what the heck? That is the fact that someone created that in the first place, and then you guys 40 years later diagnosing and fixing problems. It's crazy. But the location to us is almost like a character in the film itself, you know what I mean? So Still Standing is very much about where we are specifically down in little old Adelaide. And I think what we would love to do, I think moving forward and with how this all goes, I think there's definitely room to expand out into Australia as a whole after Still Standing and see what is next, because where you guys are, and there are some truly amazing arcades. We'd love to get out, and now that COVID and that is kind of coming to a close and we've got more freedom, I think once we wrap Still Standing up, it'd be awesome to look at Australia as a whole and maybe elaborate even further down the track. But we're definitely going to come up for a visit.
We'll definitely have you. I'll speak on their behalf. Sorry, Steve. On their behalf. We'll definitely have you. Yeah, it seems so fitting to be here. It's I mentioned before, but it's just between Stephen and yourselves talking. Just this energy that's running through this arcade. I don't want to be perfectly lit when we're having this conversation, because this is the light of the arcade. If I had, those ring lights on me and I, perfectly lit, it just wouldn't be appropriate for this interview. So I'm really happy. How about gaming in the office? The BGVC office. Is there a cabinet in the office, or?
We have two. Yeah, we have an.
You have two. I was sitting on that question. I'm going, should I ask it? What have you got in the office?
We have an NBA Jam.
Oh, love NBA Jam. Yeah, spent millions.
And then just a multi cab. So the level of tinkering that I'm competent to do is curating a little Raspberry Pi and putting some of Caitlin and I have Donkey Kong tournaments, which basically is who can get to the end of level 2 without dying.
That's as far as we've got.
Yeah, Donkey Kong's a challenge. Yeah, definitely.
The King of Kong is a big influence for us, which is a film. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Yeah. That vibe and that small town sort of feel. That's just there's a few films that we watch sort of routinely as we've been doing this to look at what other people have done to really bottle the atmosphere and the vibe. And that's one of the films. So yes, but we have two cabs here. But we were set up on that side, but it looked a bit awkward. It's a bit, that's the gear side of the office.
Oh, very good. All right. Well, we're almost out of time. Probably last messages from you both? What do we have to look forward to?
Well, I think people have to look forward to is a really personal storytelling, I guess, moment of a handful of arcade owners here, which I think those stories will resonate not only across Australia, but internationally, whether you're an arcade owner or you're a private collector or you're just a fan of the games. Hands down, I think there's going to be people who are going to watch it and go, oh my God, I remember that. And it's going to evoke all this nostalgia and all these memories. And it's going to be a nice little feel good look back at, some of people's greatest memories and a golden era of gaming. And I hope, if anything as well, that it really encourages people to get out there and support their local arcades as well. If you want the opportunity to play these games and you want to continue to see them available to the general public, then you really need to get out there and support them, because it's not easy, particularly with COVID as well. That's really thrown a spanner in the works for arcade owners.
Yeah, and Still Standing is certainly just as much a people story, and that's basically, and I think that as well will resonate with your collectors and your operators and arcade owners, is that this is about the people and about their individual struggles and about what their lifestyle is like as an arcade owner. But yeah, we're more than anything, we're just so pleased to see that people are interested in our film, and that the industry is sort of, has welcomed us with open arms. We're not experts at pinball and arcade, and we're learning all the time as well. But we just want to show it in this, we're not even trying to show it in any angle. literally just nice lighting. You know what I mean? Like make it look, make it. We just want to show these things for what they are, like dust, warts and all. You know what I mean? Like, because that's a big part of the charm. Scuff marks on the kickboard at the front. You know, like you know, they're the kind of things that we want to show. But no, we just appreciate anyone that's helped us give Still Standing a platform to reach I guess the community and the family of you know, of fans and arcade owners and operators alike. I
love the trailer. For me, you set a real tone, and it's personal, and you know, the duration of 1 or 2 minutes. Even then, I can see there's something I'm really looking forward to seeing. So can't wait to see the final film.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is my same sentiments. Yeah, we're so impressed with that. Well, we will let you go, but thank you very much for your time and fantastic work. We'll talk soon.
No, thanks
worries.
for having
Thank
us.
you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.